This is Mike at DOT Compliance Help. We're going to present another NTSB report today. This one happened back in 2023. As usual, these days it took almost 2 years for them to finish the NTSB report. It came out in March of last year. This was a really simple incident. It's a one vehicle crash. Usually the NTSB doesn't even come on board with a well, I didn't mean to say a single vehicle crash. I mean to say a single fatality. The NTSB always signs on when there's more than one fatality. This gasoline truck exits this interstate going this direction, exits off to the right here, and he's making this left sweep underneath the interstate. And for some reason, he didn't slow down sufficiently. And the tanker tipped over, and the manhole cover wasn't secured properly. So the root cause, nobody can really say. The driver failed to make to slow down. And nobody really knows why. But contributing to the severity was this 8,000 pounds of gasoline that just poured out immediately. The guy was in the truck, had his seatbelt on. He was steering, so it's not like he fell asleep ahead of time. He was steering, he just wasn't braking. The truck tipped over, the gasoline splashed out. The flames developed so quickly the driver couldn't even get out of the cab. He just burned to death in his seat. And the fire torched the interstate. You notice how it, in that first slide you could see that it collapsed. So the root cause was the driver failed to decrease speed, and contributing to the severity was that manhole cover being unsecured. As always, I don't read these reports to you. I'll show it to you. You can pause and read the verbiage if you wish. But the NTSB, as always, they produce hundreds of pages of information, and it's all very easily available. The only thing you need is the report number. You can Google NTSB report and the report number that was on that first slide, and you can read the whole thing. That manhole cover is an interesting thing. Just for fun, I talk about the 5 why approach sometimes, but I very seldom walk through it step by step. Let's talk about this. The manhole cover was not properly closed. Does it mean the driver is an idiot or he's a careless, lazy bum? I don't think so. Because, I mean, there's all the evidence in the world. He was a proficient driver, generally does a good job. The motor carrier doesn't have a lot of violations. But why would the manhole cover be open? Well, maybe as an industry, we all don't do a good enough job. So the 5 whys, let's take it from the top. Why was the hatch open? Because he didn't do a proper pre-trip. Why didn't he do a good pre-trip? Because he wasn't properly trained or supervised. Now, a lot of times I look at motor carriers and the evidence is that there's never been any safety training done. I don't believe that's the case. It seems that this motor carrier has a fairly robust training system, but apparently not perfect. Why was the driver not properly trained? Well, lack of ownership, prioritization on proper maintenance and safety practices. And again, I'm just shooting in the dark. It's hard to tell. I'm not there. You don't know for sure what's going on in the guy's head unless you're walking in his footsteps. Why does a hazmat carrier not care as much as they should about safety and maintenance? Maybe because the DOT doesn't adequately enforce this. Why doesn't the DOT enforce things? Because the public desire is for cheap freight. The public is willing to accept a certain amount of accidents and fatalities. The only thing, and this is my opinion, but a lot of people share this opinion, the only thing that's ever going to change the DOT's inadequate enforcement is going to be a larger number of accidents and fatalities, similar to what happened recently with the drivers not being able to speak English. The public, not just the motor carriers, but the general public is sick of it. So now Congress is going to have to act. They're going to compel the DOT to act. The DOT is going to have to enforce the laws more efficiently. The NTSB always walks through every aspect of everything. The human factors, this guy was basically in the prime of life as a truck driver. He's got plenty of experience. He's been driving for this company now. TK Transport owns the trucks and hires the drivers, and they're subcontracted to that other company. He's been recognized as being an above average driver. Health and medical, there was an issue about blood pressure, but he did have a 2-year physical. Post-crash toxicology indicated some Benadryl on board, but at less than therapeutic levels. So we don't even think that's going to make a guy sleepy. course, it depends on the individuals. You never know. My Uncle Randall said that the slightest bit of Benadryl would put him to sleep, just a tiny bit, and he had a hard time. He'd struggle to get awake. I mean, to be fully alert for days. So maybe that was it. Again, I didn't walk a mile in the guy's shoes. The pre-employment drug test was okay. The motor carrier wasn't completely negligent. Cell phone use. This was an interesting observation. We see a lot of cell phone usage where a guy's been talking on his cell phone for 3 hours in the last 6 hours, and he was on the phone at the moment of the crash. That was absolutely not the case here. There was some excessive cell phone use on a Thursday, but that was several days ago. I think it was Sunday or Monday night when this happened. The vehicle factors. This is interesting. I've always known that I'm sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Stability Advisor is a technology that's available, and stability control is something else you can purchase. But according to this NTSB report, the electronic stability control has been mandatory for trucks that were made in 2019. I feel like an idiot, but that kind of slipped past me. I have a customer that's a big dealer. I'm going to call them and get some clarification and make sure I don't misunderstand that. So the tanker rollover may not have happened if the truck was equipped with the electronic stability control that would have applied a percentage of braking to axles 4 and 5 and therefore slowed the truck down when he entered the turn a little too fast. So what can you do as a motor carrier? That's the bottom line, and we'll come back to this concept right here. The NTSB couldn't tell if there was a mechanical malfunction. I shouldn't laugh because the driver was torched to death, but the NTSB couldn't really tell if there was a mechanical malfunction because the truck was just melted into a puddle of various kinds of metal. Motor carrier factors. TK Transport owns the trucks and hires the drivers, and I believe TK Transport and several other contractors are signing on to Penn Tank Lines. And Penn Tank Lines is the one that actually dictates the safety management controls. And from the looks of it, they're very robust. And his training did include making sure that manhole cover is checked. They're using Omnitrax. I'm not a big fan of Omnitrax, but I doubt if that was a factor. They've had 8 compliance reviews. Now, that might be 8 compliance reviews spread out over 40 years. I don't know. But they've never had an unsat. The fact that the NTSB said this probably means they did have a conditional at one point. But, even if you're a really big company and you do a really good job, it's not that hard to get an unsat. I had a really sophisticated company come to me one time and they said, "We just failed this compliance review. Bail us out here." And they had made 3 different mistakes, and every single one of them, it was really easy to do. So the fact that they might have had a conditional, that doesn't make me think they're not a really proficient motor carrier. From what I've read here, Penn Tank Lines does a great job. What else do we know about Penn Tank Lines? This is current. I just pulled this up in SMS yesterday. They've got 450 drivers and 440 trucks. Their out-of-service percentage is way below the national average for drivers and for trucks. Their recordable crash rate, 0.3, 26 million miles. I mean, these guys do a lot, and they do it pretty well. Now, I didn't pull up the SMS report, and if it could be in the NTSB report, but I didn't try that. But just from a couple comments in the NTSB report, we can see that they were a little bit bigger a couple years ago, maybe as a result of this post-crash aftermath. Maybe they downsized a little bit, but we don't know that for sure. That could be market forces. They're 20% smaller than they were a couple years ago. The NTSB always looks at everything: the road design, the truck's mechanical condition, the motor carrier. The driver was belted in. The driver was taking steering action. He just didn't hit the brakes. There was no indication that there was a medical event, but keep in mind, the driver as well as the truck was thoroughly torched. So there's a lot of things that you would normally be able to find from a post-crash evaluation that you couldn't in this case. The probable cause of the crash: the guy was driving too fast for conditions. Now, there's been some training. So moving forward, here's the problem. What can you do to keep it from happening in the future? It's not implementing the governor on the truck, because you're not going to govern it down to 44 miles an hour. You can't mechanically force a truck to go down to 25. There is one possibility that this guy drives at night, but when he takes a couple days off, he's going to enjoy his day off during the daytime. So his body is switching back and forth from days to nights. And I mean, that's something you want to try to avoid it if you can, but I can't imagine how you could avoid it. If you're delivering gasoline, you really need to do it at night. And when a guy gets a couple days off, he wants to spend his time with his family. And he's not even driving through the weekend. I mean, the guy's off on the weekend. So his days off, he's going to spend with his family in the daytime. So the FMCSA says there's only 19 open manhole violations a year, but that doesn't mean that everybody is always perfectly good at securing a manhole. I think they probably don't climb up on top of a truck very often. So it's not like this open manhole thing is an epidemic or something like that. Now, this particular motor carrier has not had a single open manhole violation in the last 2 years. That's since the wreck. Again, the probable cause, the guy was going too fast. And I hate to say it, but I can't make a logical suggestion what could be different. But I believe if I was the motor carrier, I could find something. There's just so much that we can't know looking in from the outside. Contributing cause to the severity was the deal with the manhole cover. Again, I'm not sure what can be done to prevent that from happening 100%. Maybe if 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 you've got a camera at the loading dock, and if AI is analyzing the film, the guy should check the manhole to make sure it's closed. But gosh, that sounds like a lot of effort for something that almost never happens. But even if it just happens once, look at the catastrophic nature of this whole thing. The NTSB says motor carriers as a whole, the industry now, should focus on fatigue management systems, and electronic stability control is something that should be that should be more trucks should be equipped with it. But that's really all we could glean out of this particular accident report. Is really cut and dried, and there weren't too many moving parts. It's just really simple. But that said, there could be a million different things that went on. If I was the safety manager for this company, I would hope to think I could find some other opportunities for improvement. Other than that, please leave your comments below. Please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you've got questions, post them there. If I don't see them, send me an email. Thanks for your time. We'll have another one up in a day or two. Have a good day.